Guys, I think I understand it now. I'm finally beginning to understand why some people say the Daytona 500 has lost the aura or the mystique it once had. And it has nothing to do with the underdog winners. It's the fact that the race has become a total crapshoot. Now, yeah, super speedway races have always been crapshoots by nature ever since the restrictor plate has introduced. It's always been like that. But believe it or not, skill in the draft still matters. There are drivers like Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace, even Austin Dillon to an extent, making all of the big moves. And more often than not, at least one of those guys I mentioned is always there at the end of those races. Why is that? It's because they're the best in the business right now. And when they win, it feels deserving. These past couple of winners nowadays, like Stenhouse, McDowell, and Byron, have been anything but. And no disrespect to those guys because they are very solid at super speedways in their own right. But it's just the way they end up winning the races. It's so anticlimactic. It's always the same old story. As a matter of fact, 4 of the past 5 winners now actually, you usually see quality racing up front most of the way through, with your usual suspects leading the way, until boom, a bad block or push triggers a chain reaction, several of those strong cars get taken out and the race becomes a ticking time bomb where whoever is out front when the last lap caution comes out, or the first guy to emerge from a huge crash unscathed, is awarded with the win. And I'm sorry, that doesn't feel like deserving to me. Look back at 2011 for example. Trevor Bayne, the greatest underdog winning Daytona 500, dare I say, all of NASCAR's history. He was mad fast all weekend, and was generally up front from start to finish. So yeah, by all accounts, it was an underdog win. But it felt deserving because he was in it all race long and he was very solid all throughout speed weeks. Now, William Byron, on the other hand, arguably a top 3 driver in the sport right now, his Daytona 500 win from last year doesn't feel as deserving as Trevor Bayne's 2011 win, even though he's one of the top dogs in NASCAR. Why? Because of what I just said. Dude just happened to be in front as the entire field wiped each other out in the closing laps. And this year's edition was no exception. Speaking of that race, it started with overcast skies. The threat of rain has been present all weekend, and it even rained sparingly on Thursday and Friday, to the point that practice for both trucks and ARCA, as well as Xfinity qualifying, were all cancelled. Because of this, the race started an hour early, which was a great decision. I always love when NASCAR does this. The sooner a race starts, the better, as it gives you scheduling flexibility. Some parts of the fanbase were pissed, thinking that NASCAR was doing this on bad faith and that they only want to race until halfway, and that instead they need to do whatever is possible to make sure the race goes the distance, even if it means postponing the race to Monday because it's a crown jewel, which is just a stupid argument in and of itself. And this is not the first time a Daytona 500 or crown jewel race has been impacted by weather, anyways. As a fan, you have already made plans to attend the race as scheduled, or in my case, watch the race live. So yeah, it sucks when it happens, but it is what it is. As long as NASCAR makes their best and honest effort to try and get the race scheduled on the race to its scheduled distance on the day of the race, as long as they do it in good faith, that's fine by me. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get to see any action past lap 10 because as soon as the race started, Mother Nature made its move. I mean, you could even see the raindrops on the camera lens during the opening laps. So the red flag was thrown due to rain. But hey, on the plus side, the race is already underway. Because had the race started on its original scheduled time, we wouldn't even be sure if cars would have hit the track at all on Sunday. Regardless, we got to wait about 3.5 hours for the race to resume. And despite a brief scare during the caution period that rain would return again, the race officially resumed on lap 25 just as nighttime was falling. And from there, the field stayed 2 to 3 wide for most of the race. Yeah, there were moments during long green flag runs that you would see a small pack of cars clear the entire rest of the field, but most of the time it was 2 to 3 wide, especially when they were on fuel safe mode, which is why you can't get too excited about the racing, because that's not how normal super speedway races go. at face value to the casual fan, yeah, watching all those cars bunched together is gonna feel, or it's gonna see, is gonna be aesthetically pleasing. But us real NASCAR fans know that that is not how these cars normally race, especially considering that no one is going anywhere or making any moves when they're so bunched up like that. It's not that they're capable as much as they just don't have the space, or in some cases the clean air, to make those moves. Now, we did see some aggression early on and some risky moves, and by that I mean Joey Logano, but Kyle Busch also had his moments, especially when racing around the 22. Like, you could tell the guy got fed up with Joey real quick. Despite the aggression though, Logano went on to win stage 1 after a caution came out for a stack up on the bottom lane that caused Zane Smith to spin and collect Josh Berry off of turn 2. But as has been the trend so far this weekend, if you win a stage, you're bound to run into some terrible luck. And in Logano's case, as soon as stage 2 started, his ECU just shut off. He could not shift to 4th gear on the restart, and this led to another stack up towards the back of the field that took out Truex, Castro Neves, and Ross Chastain, with Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson, and I believe Justin Allgaier were also involved. So a lot of fan favorites were impacted in that wreck, and that was the second mechanical issue of the race. Because I didn't mention this, but AJ Allmendinger, he came down pit road during stage 1 for an engine issue that ended up being terminal. Now, in Logano's case, however, his problem caused him to fall a lap down, but he was able to get the free pass later on and come back to finish stage 2 in 8th. And speaking of stage 2, it was more of the same, with the entire field going 3 wide while saving fuel once again. And with the cautions coming at the right time, we didn't see any green flag pit stops. As a matter of fact, we never saw a green flag pit stop for the rest of the race because the cautions were coming out at timely moments. And teams were coming down pit road for fuel every chance they got. So the Penske domination continued. While Logano was busy racing his way back to the front, it was his other two teammates, Ryan Blaney and Austin Cindric, who battled each other for the stage win, with Blaney winning out on a last lap pass after giving Cindric a push on the backstretch, and then backing up in front of Elliott to get the help he needed to make the move on the outside lane stick. Just a textbook superspeedway move. And stage 3 was largely uneventful until that debris caution that came out. Yeah, the entire field was 3 wide, but again, no one could make moves because of how bunched up the field was. So you had the same guys up front leading laps in Bubba Wallace, Ryan Blaney, and William Byron. And from that point on, it was go time, with Cindric, Blaney, Kyle Busch, and Austin Dillon leading a small 7 to 8 car breakaway on the bottom lane, might I add. But with 50 laps to go, LaJoie and Stenhouse made their way up to the lead, along with Logano, who has had an up and down day due to the aforementioned electrical issue. I believe he got to make a couple more additional pit stops compared to the rest of the field. But yeah, those three caught up with a second lane that formed near the middle. And with those three guys up front and their history, you knew something was bound to happen. And unfortunately, it did. Stenhouse threw a bad block with 15 to go. Logano tried to force his way through the gap that he left, and next thing you know, they both get together and crash, taking out several good cars in the process. Blaney, Elliott, Kyle Busch, and Noah Gragson were among those involved. This left Cindric and LaJoie alone against the Toyotas of Bell, Denny Hamlin, and Riley Herbst. And at first, it looked like Toyota had the advantage, but even that went down the drain when Christopher Bell got wrecked on the backstretch after a bad push from Cole Custer, leading to another multi-car wreck, where Larson, Suarez, and Eric Jones were among those collected. But it was Ryan Preece, who had been doing an excellent speed week so far. His race ended in yet another spectacular crash when he hit the 20 head-on after he was already wrecked. He got airborne with the front wheels lifting the car, went up the turn 3 banking upside down, did a flip, almost hit the catch fence, went down the banking again, and then came to a stop on the apron. And all I gotta say to that is, man, why is it always Ryan Preece who wrecks out like this? I guess it must be because his first name is Ryan, because there's no other explanation. We all know about Ryan Newman and his history with hard wrecks and cars lying on top of him. And Ryan Blaney has had his fair share of hard hits throughout his career, even though he's never flipped. So I just guess it's Ryan Prince's turn now. But that sent the race into overtime. And at this point, the only good cars left were Austin Cindric and Denny Hamlin. And coming to the white flag, it looked like the race would be decided between the two of them. Hamlin, a 3-time Daytona 500 winner against the guy, Austin Cindric, the guy who qualified on the front row, won his dual race, and led the most laps. Unfortunately, the rest of the field had other plans. The 11 got wrecked, the 2 got a piece of it, and in the ensuing carnage, it was William Byron once again who came out with the lead to become win not only his second Daytona 500, but also become the first back-to-back Daytona 500 winner since Denny Hamlin did it back in 2020. In a similar fashion to how he won last year's race too. He just happened to be leading after a crash on the last lap happened. Again, none of the guys who stayed up front for most of the race came out with a win. As a matter of fact, none of those guys even had a chance to win because Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, and Bubba Wallace were all taken out in previous wrecks, and those were guys that had stayed up front, like in the top 5, top 10 for most of the race, from what I watch at least. And while Austin Cindric was in contention until the very end, he still wound up becoming a victim of the last lap carnage. And this is the problem with super speedway racing today. Regardless of how good or bad the racing was, it becomes a total lottery in the final 15 to 20 laps, which is why I cannot give this race a grade higher than a C+. I'm giving it a C+. The race was good, above average to good, but it's just that the final 15 to 20 laps are just so messy that it causes the winner to become a lottery, and it doesn't feel deserving in the end. Now, as for the driver of the day, on that same token, I'm not going with William Byron. Instead, I'm going with Austin Cindric as my driver of the day. The guy who, in my opinion, put a complete speed weeks together. He qualified extremely well, he won his dual race, led the most laps, and he was a factor all race long. And despite being involved in that last lap crash, he still managed to salvage an 8th place finish out of it. So some final thoughts that I have regarding this race. Unlike what we saw in Trucks and Xfinity, the bottom lane was the preferred lane overall. At first it looked like it would be the top lane, but the bottom started working better as the race went on, especially towards the end with about 30 to go when there was that huge 7 to 8 car breakaway with the Penske and RCR cars leading the way. Now, like I said yesterday when talking about the Xfinity race, I don't usually voice my opinions or criticisms regarding the broadcasting, but I kind of feel obligated to say this since I have been very critical of NASCAR on Fox. Their coverage was not that bad today. In particular, the lack of full screen commercials made the experience a bit more engaging. So yeah. Also, big credit to NASCAR for actually letting them race back to the line this time. They didn't throw the caution for that last lap wreck, even though I fully expected them to. Not that it would have made much of a difference because Tyler Reddick, who was the guy who finished second behind William Byron, he was right there behind the 24, but I don't think he had the momentum to make any move happen. So honestly, I wouldn't have been mad if the Daytona 500 happened, but I'm so glad that they led the race back to the line for once. Also, shout out to Jimmy Johnson for finishing third. I didn't even realize he got a top 5 out of all these men until I took a look at the finishing results. And Justin Allgaier also finished 9th on Junior Motorsports' first ever Cup start. But yeah, those guys were literally the only bright spots that came out of this chaos. Man, the Daytona 500 is just not what it used to be, man.